If you want your home to be warm, comfortable to live in, energy efficient and cheaper to run, then there are 4 areas that you must attend to. Insulation is the obvious one. You need to make it airtight. You need to make it breathable, especially if your house was built before 1930. And the big one that I want to talk about today is ventilation. Now, we hear a lot about insulation, but not very much at all about ventilation because it feels counterintuitive. If you watch my video on airtightness, I'm talking all the way through about you've got to cut out uncontrolled air to keep the place warm. And then here I am now talking about you've got to put it back in again. So it can be really tempting to either leave out ventilation or, if you've already got extractor fans, to cover them up because of the cold drafts. But sadly, that would be a really big mistake, absolutely huge, because without ventilation, you can end up with condensation and then potential for the dreaded mould. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you all about the different ways to do it here. A piece of information for you to start with. A family of 4 can produce up to 14 litres of moisture a day. That's 24 pints. And it's produced by having a shower, washing your hair, doing the cooking, putting the kettle on, breathing. And all of that has to be dealt with. We also need a regular flow of fresh air with oxygen, so we've got the energy to do what we want to do. And ventilation is fundamental to both of those. If we don't have good ventilation, then the first thing is that we'll run out of oxygen and feel lethargic. And you will understand that completely if you've ever sat in a business meeting or a work meeting in a windowless room and you start to feel really tired and lethargic and just can't wait to go home. It's because you haven't got the oxygen. So we need to keep that going. There are also lots of toxins in the air in our lives, sadly, from cleaning materials, hairsprays, deodorants. If you've got wood-burning stoves, you've got particulates. Even if you burn lovely smelly candles, there's toxins that come off those, and we need to get rid of them because they can lead to ill health. And then finally, all of that moisture, it's got to go somewhere. And if the air gets saturated, then it will inevitably condense on any surface that's even vaguely cold. And then you end up with puddles on your windowsills and the risk of black mould, which is definitely not good for our health. There are a number of ways to bring ventilation into a house. For example, extractor fans. We're all used to having those in the bathroom. So it's essentially a hole in the wall with a little fan over the top. And it's dependent on the amount of airflow that's going on outside. So if you've got a windy day, you're going to have a lot of air coming into the bathroom. If it's still, not so much. But that deals very effectively with the moisture that comes when we have showers and baths. Generally, in the kitchen, you'll have some sort of extractor either over the top of the hob, or if you've got a modern induction hob, it might be integral to the whole thing. And that deals with the steam from cooking. You might also have an extractor like you've got in the bathroom in the kitchen to deal with the excess moisture. The other place we're used to them is trickle vents, and that's a little grill that sits in the top of your window, so the top of your double or triple glazed windows, and that's letting in air in exactly the same way. It might have a cover on it so you can close it off if the room's really cold, or it might just be an open grill. Both our extractor and trickle vents are dependent on the amount of movement in the air outside. And that's the problem with them, because they're not within your control. Another ventilation option is the PIV, Positive Input Ventilation System. I've only read about these. I've never met anybody who's got one, so I'll put a link below in the description and then you can go and have a look for yourself. What I understand from what I've read is that it's a unit that goes in the loft and it draws air from the outside and pushes it through a vent into the house, and that changes the air pressure in the house, which means that it pushes any stale air out of air gaps in the fabric of the house. So it sounds like an interesting idea. It also sounds as if it relies on you having a leaky loft and also to some extent a leaky house, because the stale air's got to go out through somewhere. So it is apparently much less disruptive than putting in a full MVHR, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and it's a lot less expensive, so definitely worth a look. Let's look at the other options. There are two possibilities that are heat recovery, so they ventilate and keep hold of your heat. One is an MVHR, that's mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. You generally see these in new houses because it's a big installation and it's possible to do it when you're starting from scratch. It depends on the ventilation unit and a heat exchanger that's installed into your loft, and then ducting that goes throughout the house, bringing a vent into each room, and it sucks out the stale air, takes it back up to the loft, exchanges it with the fresh air, and as that exchange goes on, the heat is passed over and you end up with warm, fresh air coming into your house. It should be saving you about 80 to 85% of your heat, so it's well worth looking at. But if you're retrofitting, then that's more difficult to do because of the size of the ducts and also the piping that's needed, the installation into all the different rooms of your house. The other option is single room heat recovery units. Now this is what we've used in our house because it's a Victorian house, and we just would never get all that ducting for the MVHR system in here. And then I discovered that you can get single room units. Now there's real benefit to this because all you need is an outside wall, and you can add them in as you go along. We started with just having two. We went traditionally with the bathroom and the kitchen, but then concerned about the level of airtightness that we've got, we've now added them in, and we've got them in each room. We've got a big one that serves a maxi that serves the kitchen and the dining room, which is all open plan. We've got one in the small front room and then one in each bedroom and the bathroom. You can link them all together through an app. And there's various options for this. I'll put some links below in the description so you can go and take a look. The ones we've got are very discreet. It's just like a small box on the wall and then an even smaller cover on the outside. So all you need is somebody to drill a big hole through the wall and then an electrician to wire them all in. And what it means is, again, that the moist, warm air is drawn out, fresh air is brought in, and in the heat recovery unit within the wall itself, then the heat is passed over from one to the other. And they say we're saving 85% of our energy usage. So that's a really good option if you're retrofitting an old house. So in essence, you can't have an energy efficient home without having enough ventilation. If you don't put in the ventilation, you'll end up with sick building syndrome, you'll end up with mould, you'll have all sorts of health issues. It just isn't even worth contemplating. So take a look at all the links. I'll put them in the description so you can see what the options might be for you. And if you've any questions, please do ask. I'm always happy to help.